Todd Blanche, Trump defense lawyer. The Access Hollywood tape was released October 7th, 2016, a month before the election. The tape itself was from 2005, 11 years earlier. And as you heard from witnesses, this was an extremely personal event for President Trump. Nobody, and again, I'm just going to state the obvious, nobody wants their family to be subjected to that sort of thing. But the government wants you to believe that the release of that tape from 2005 was so catastrophic to the campaign that it provided a motive for President Trump to do something criminal. Again, this is Trump's defense counsel, quote, "But there is no evidence of that. President Trump did not react to the Access Hollywood tape in any way the government is suggesting. You heard the politicians reacted negatively to the Access Hollywood tape. They didn't testify. You heard that there was even talk about something consequential for President Trump, who was a Republican nominee. But none of that happened. None of that is true. You heard that President Trump and his campaign got ready for the debate, responded to the allegations, and continued campaigning. So there were a couple days of frustration and consternation, but that happens all the time in campaigns, and we know that. The Access Hollywood tape is being set up in this trial to be something that it is not. It was one of many stressful stories and issues that came up during the 2016 campaign. It was not a doomsday event. President Trump, as you saw, addressed it in a video that was addressed to the release to the American public. He addressed it in a debate a couple days later. He never thought it was going to cost him to lose the campaign. And indeed, it didn't. It was not a doomsday event. That was from Trump defense counsel Todd Blanche today in his summation to the jury, claiming that the Access Hollywood tape was no big deal. And obviously, you can argue about whether or not it makes sense for Trump's defense to try to make this claim that there was no new sense of urgency around Trump's various creepy sex scandals in October 2016, right before the election, right after that tape came out. The strategic importance of making this claim is not, at least to me, particularly obvious on its face. But this is a factual claim, right, from the Trump defense. The factual record about whether or not that tape was a big deal, that is an empirically observable thing. That is a thing we can check. Did it matter at the time? We were all alive and sentient when it happened. We can remember. We can check.
Trump tape bombshell. Donald Trump caught on a hot mic months after marrying Melania, making vulgar comments about groping women, saying when you're a star, they let you do it.
Notice the hurricane graphic at the very beginning of that. Going away. No, it's this thing. When the Access Hollywood tape came out just a month before the 2016 election, it did knock hurricane news out of the news cycle. It was what NBC News' Lester Holt described at the time as a bombshell. Not only did Trump's comments about grabbing straight for women's genitals make front page news across the country, the news really did, in real life, lead to an avalanche of Republicans calling for Trump to drop out of the race. This is the New York Times. Lewd Donald Trump tape is a breaking point for many in the GOP. This is the Washington Post. 36 Republicans have now called for Donald Trump to drop out. Here's the local view from swing state Michigan. State Republican leader Ronna Romney McDaniel says Trump's talk about women is disgusting. This was the headline in Politico. Republican women are done with Trump. That all happened not that long ago in our living memory. Today, in closing arguments, Trump's defense tried to argue that the Access Hollywood tape was just a normal day on the campaign trail with no real consequences, trying to tell the jury that even though the timing of the evidence makes it look like Trump's side suddenly got motivated to quash the Stormy Daniels story days after the tape, well, that can't really be right because Trump had no reason to worry about the impact of that tape. It had no impact. Why make an argument like that? That is so easily disprovable, even by people's own living memories, right? All these jurors, these jurors are not junior high school students. They were all old enough in 2016 to have lived through it and to remember it. Even if they did forget living through it, in her testimony in court this month, Hope Hicks, the Trump campaign press secretary when the tape came out, described the release of the Access Hollywood tape by saying this. She said, quote, "I had a good sense to believe this was going to be a massive story." Quote, "I think there was a consensus among all of us that the tape was damaging, and that this was a crisis. Hicks also went on to describe how it pushed hurricane news out of the news. One dramatic moment in today's closing arguments, today's summations from the defense and then the prosecution, happened fairly early on in the prosecution summation. The prosecutor acted out for the jury a phone call between Michael Cohen and Donald Trump, a phone call as it could have happened. This is an important phone call because the defense had sort of hung a big part of its case on the idea that Michael Cohen, was lying about a phone call that he said he had with Donald Trump about Stormy Daniels, because that phone call was very short. That phone call was only, I believe, 1 minute and 36 seconds long. Cohen also in that time says he spoke to Trump's bodyguard. He had to speak to Trump's bodyguard, Keith Schiller, and say, hey, will you put Trump on? And then he spoke with Trump about Stormy Daniels. The defense claimed that if it was only 1 minute and 36 seconds, that just wasn't enough time for Cohen to have had any substantive discussion with Trump about Stormy Daniels and about this alleged hush money plot. They said the length of that call, which they had from phone records, effectively disproved that conversation between Cohen and Trump could have gone the way Cohen said. So this is from today's court transcript. This is the prosecutor, Joshua Steinglass, acting, sort of recreating that call and timing himself doing it so the jury could experience in real time how long it might reasonably have taken for Cohen and Trump to have the conversation that Michael Cohen says they had. Joshua Steinglass, the prosecutor. And that brings us to the phone call on October 24th at 8:02 p.m., in which Cohen testified that he called to speak with Mr. Trump. And it turns out that at first he was speaking to Keith Schiller about getting harassing phone calls. And of course, the defense says, aha, that's perjury. The only interpretation of that is that he's lying. That's the only interpretation that they want you to consider. To them, that is the big lie. But that's not the only interpretation. Steinglass says, forgive me for a minute, but let's try a little experiment. I will be Cohen. Hey, Keith, how's it going? It seems like this prankster might be a 14-year-old kid. If I text you the number, can you call and talk to his family? See if you can let them know how serious this is. It's not a joke. Uh-huh. Yeah. All right. Thanks, pal. Hey, is the boss near you? Can you pass him the phone for a minute? I'll wait just a couple of seconds. Hey, boss, I know you're busy, but I just wanted to let you know that this other thing is moving forward with my friend Keith Davidson and the other party that we discussed. It's back on track. I'm going to try one last time to get our friend David Pecker to pay, but if it's not, it's going to be on us to take care of it. Uh-huh. Yeah. All right. Good luck in Tampa. Bye. And then just Steinglass says, 49 seconds.